And we are live with our live video trading analytics. Today we're talking about valuation and what gives cryptocurrency its value. I'm going to bring to you some of the best, I'm going to distill some of the best ideas that came out of the Bitcoin conference in Miami last week. So instead of having to buy a plane ticket to Miami and spend $1,000 for tickets, or watching all the videos on YouTube, which some of them were really good, but some of them were kind of average and not so great, a little boring. So what I'll do is I'll distill the best ideas out of that conference for you, and we'll talk about what hot ideas came out of the 2018 Bitcoin conference in Miami. So today we're talking about valuations and what gives cryptocurrency its value. First, let's look at the day we're at right now, because this is another down day for cryptocurrencies in general. You can see most of the coins here are in the red. All right, so looking at the heat map, which on Yahoo is a great way to look at the whole cryptocurrency space. And these numbers aren't huge. They're not as bad as they were the last time when the whole market was tanking, but still, Bitcoin down 9%, Ethereum down 7%, Ripple down 13%, Bitcoin Cash down 11%, Cardano down 10%. This one, XLM, Stellar, is up a little bit. VE Chain up a little bit, 0.25%. So not a lot to write home about in the heat map. And it's always good to look at these side by side as far as price, because these are the top 5 in market cap. Okay, Ethereum is in the pink line here, and Bitcoin Cash the green line, Bitcoin the purple line, Cardano is yellow, and Ripple is blue. So this big plunge that you see right from here to here is that scare that we had with the Korean regulation. So from here all the way down to here, all the cryptocurrencies plunged, and you can see that obviously Ethereum fared a lot better than Ripple, which was the worst performer, partly because Ripple started dropping way back here well before that Korean scare, and Ethereum was up well before that Korean scare. So you can see Ethereum held on to some of those gains, but still dropped significantly. And on the day today, this is today, the 22nd, right here. All the cryptocurrencies are in the red. So what did we learn at the Miami Bitcoin conference? Well, one of the best talks, probably either the best or one of the top 3 for sure, were Jeffrey Tucker from the American Institute for Economic Research. And his talk was really interesting because it was basically a discussion of how people misconceive Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies and what the common misconceptions are. He's been working in cryptocurrency for a while and in economics for longer. So he's the editorial director of American Institute for Economic Research. And he said that there are 3 main misconceptions that he sees whenever he talks to people about cryptocurrencies. And the 3 misconceptions are these. One is that we are all deluded, that we're all living this mass delusion that these things actually have value. The second misconception is that it's the work and the mining and the electricity and the cryptography and all that goes into Bitcoin that makes it valuable. And that's not true. And finally, the last misconception that Jeffrey Tucker talked about was that the current market valuations are purely speculative. So let's look at these individually, because he made some really good points, and what I'm going to do is summarize, and then I'm adding some sort of filling out some of the details that he left out. He said, if we're all deluded, then this entire conference, everyone here is falling under some kind of weird hoax, and every business of thousands of businesses in the cryptocurrency space is a scam, and we're all just living in this weird, through-the-looking-glass, turned around world. And one day we're going to wake up and find out that it's all fallen to pieces, and we're going to feel extremely stupid and embarrassed. And our children will talk about it. Can you believe, and he made this joke, can you believe when Dad went for that whole, what was it called, that crypto thing? That was embarrassing. And he said it's funny because some of the finest minds on Wall Street actually believe this, and some of the most successful investors believe this. Here's Warren Buffett with, his concept of Bitcoin has no value, it's a bubble, and here on CNBC he's calling it a joke. And it's hard to explain. How does something invisible and intangible have any value? But the point that Jeffrey Tucker was making was that there are very good, logical, rational reasons to believe that Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies actually have value. And you got to look at what is it that creates value. So this whole delusion thing is the first misconception, that everybody in the cryptocurrency space is deluded, and that there's nothing to base this belief in cryptocurrencies on. And the truth is that there's some good, logical, rational, mathematical approaches to cryptocurrencies that will give you a idea of valuation. So looking at value now, why is it valuable? Why is Bitcoin valuable? Okay, the first thing that he says most people are misled about is that it's the blockchain formation, the cryptography, the math, the electricity, the processing power that goes into building these blocks out of the unconfirmed transactions and then sealing the blocks and locking them into place in a blockchain, that's the value. And that is how miners get rewarded, but that's not the value of Bitcoin. Okay, and he brings up the point that work alone doesn't create value. This is a $20 bill, and according to the Federal Reserve, a $20 bill costs 12 cents to print. Okay, so 12 cents out of $20, that leaves $19.88 of that value to come from somewhere else. Where does it come from? It comes from the faith, the belief, the trust that people place in the government and in their statement that this bill is worth $20. So the work alone creates almost none of the value. Okay, the value is created by the faith, the trust, and the belief. In essence, the promise of the government that this bill is worth $20. So what does actually make something valuable? Well, if you go back to Econ 101, there are two boxes you have to check to obtain value: scarcity and utility. Okay, now scarcity, we're all familiar with the fact that Bitcoin has a 21 million Bitcoin limit. That's the total number of Bitcoin that can ever be mined. So the scarcity issue is, the scarcity piece is in place. Now utility, that's where everybody's really disagreeing on. Okay, now obviously what we're used to in currency is that we have dollars and then we have a way of exchanging those dollars. And there's a difference between the money and how we exchange them. All right, there's a difference between the system of minting, printing, storing, distributing, collecting, protecting the money and actually spending the money. So in cryptocurrency, those are united into a single thing. Now, we never really thought that possible before, but once you unite a currency and a payment system, you have a completely different animal than just an old money, currency, right? Old money is just a piece of paper the government prints that, with a promise that it's worth $20 in this case. But the state declares a value, and that's what fiat means, is that the value is declared by the state, and that's what the value is based on what they say. So and the thing is that money's been frozen in place. What Jeffrey Tucker, the point he makes is that money's been frozen in place as if we've found the perfect money. And he compared it to as if the Model T Ford was the perfect car. And we said, okay, well, now we're done making cars. We're just going to make this car from now on. And that's where old money is right now. It's been frozen in place literally for centuries. And remember that Bitcoin hasn't always had a value. And it wasn't until October 5th, 2009, when an actual price was posted, about 1/16 of a cent, that suddenly this thing, this intangible, untouchable, you know, uh, sort of ghost money suddenly had a value. And that made all the difference in the world. But the value comes from, according to Tucker, that the service that Bitcoin provides. He says the use value of Bitcoin is not bound up with the commodity, but the actual service. It allows you to bundle up into packets any kind of information, and now this is blockchain, that you want to, and transfer it anywhere without any geographic boundaries or restrictions. And obviously, it's decentralized, it's infinitely divisible, and it's open source, so anyone can see it, modify it, you know, see the code, and understand exactly what's going on with the cryptocurrency. So that makes it very valuable. Now, when critics argue against that value, what they say is those things are not intrinsic to Bitcoin. They're not intrinsic to cryptocurrency. They don't actually, the currency itself doesn't actually have those properties. They're just built in with the code. But actually, that's also true of almost any kind of currency, including paper money and gold. And remember, the total value of gold in the world is $7.5 trillion right now. And if you divided that by the number of bitcoins, you'd have $357,000. So if you were to believe that Bitcoin were to replace gold as the store of value, as the main store of value, or the main alternate currency, as it's sometimes referred to, then Bitcoin would be valued in the well into the six-figure range, you know, almost $500,000 there. And Tom Lee, the analyst from Fundstrat, says that Bitcoin is no different from Facebook or Google, digital businesses that are built almost purely on digital trust. So the idea that intrinsic value, that the dollar has some intrinsic value, or that gold has some intrinsic value, or that Facebook has some intrinsic value, it's just information digitized and put to use in a different way. So when you talk about currency in general and people argue that Bitcoin doesn't have intrinsic value, that the utility is not intrinsic to Bitcoin, remind them that that's also the case for $20 bills and gold bars and any other type of currency you want to name. So the third misconception that Jeffrey Tucker pointed out was that people always say that current valuations of Bitcoin are purely speculative. And he says that is actually true. Okay, that is true. And the thing is that it's true of, okay, so current valuations are speculative, that expected future valuations are discounted to the present and don't really represent a present value that's tangible. And he says that's true, but it's true for every single market. There's no existing price of any financial asset that isn't speculative, that isn't based on somewhat on the future. Okay, when you buy a stock, you're basing your value of that based on what you think the future revenue, future income of that company might be. So that's it's a speculation. And as Jeffrey Tucker points out, is that markets are about price discovery, about figuring out what the future is going to look like and then discounting that value to the present, because no one actually knows the future. And here's some predictions that you see sometimes on CNBC, that Bitcoin could be at six figures, $100,000, $400,000, and how they get these numbers are, again, using some of the mathematical calculations. For example, that what would happen if Bitcoin replaced, 5% of gold, 10% of gold, where would it be? So you can think about it. If it replaced 10% of gold, it would be somewhere around $35,000 or $40,000. And if it replaced all of gold as a store value, it would be at $350,000 at the present value of all the world's gold. And there's also another rational calculation you can make that's using Metcalfe's law, which bases the value of a network. And this guy, who was an electrical engineer and the co-inventor of Ethernet, came up with this formula that the value of a network is proportional to the number of users on the network squared. And it actually holds up for Facebook, and it, over a long period of time. And Tom Lee says that that's the analyst from Fundstrat who talked about the value of Google and Facebook being digital businesses similar to uh, with based almost purely on digital trust, similar to what Bitcoin is. Okay, this valuation based on Metcalfe's law shows that over a long period of time, they looked at the Facebook network, and the valuation of the Facebook network has stood up to it was pretty correlated pretty closely with Metcalfe's law. And Tom Lee says that 95% of Bitcoin's valuation from 2013 until today can be attributed to these two concepts. That where would Bitcoin be if it were a significant store of value, and what is the value of the network as it's growing in users over the period of 2013 till today. So if you look at the value of Bitcoin, there are good, rational, mathematical explanations for why it could be valued where it's at. And according to Jeffrey Tucker, there are three very common misconceptions about Bitcoin that are just not true. And number one is that everyone who believes in Bitcoin is deluded. And that would be, kind of like saying everyone who believes in the $20 bill is deluded. Everyone who believes in a gold bar is deluded. The second one is that Bitcoin is valuable because of the work that goes into mining it. And the third one is that current market valuations are purely speculative. And the reason is that speculation is involved in the valuation of every asset, not just Bitcoin. So, looking again before we go at today's numbers, the top 5 cryptocurrencies all down on the day. This is all the way on the right here. This is today. And you can see the longer term trend, which has, ever since that Korean scare with the regulation, has been down, and there was a bounce here for a few days from the 17th to about for about 2 days, and then sort of a sideways trading range with a downward bias since then. And hopefully today's video has given you some information that will help you make better, more informed, more research-based, rational altcoin and Bitcoin investment decisions. Ciao for now.